Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shaman in the Garden with me, Faye Johnston, here to help awaken your inner wisdom and help you feel supported by the web of life, inspired by and connected to the magic of nature in your own back garden. And my guest today is Debbie Delany of Romany Botanicals. So Debbie is a creative, she's a writer, and she's a gardener. She works with plant spirit medicine and is especially guided and enchanted by flower essences. Yay, I can almost hear lots of you cheering. She's also the creator of a unique process, which we're really going to dive into, which is known as the Essence of Self, in which she guides clients to create and journey with their own luminous essence. And that just sounds so exciting and so deep and very nourishing. So I really can't wait to talk to Debbie about that. Her work includes The Flowering, which is this really sweet, lovely book, a collection of kind of personal stories and really how the plants have guided Debbie. So we're going to ask her about that. And she lives and stewards a beautiful garden in Northern Carolina. So welcome, Debbie. I'm so excited to really finally kind of connect with you one-to-one. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Faye, so much for a lovely introduction. It's just an absolute pleasure to be here, to be in conversation with somebody who understands what I'm talking about.
Well, I love how the plants kind of weave their web just so intelligently and bringing the people together. And I would love to know, like right from the bat, is can you remember like what's one of the first instances of plants sort of talking to you or kind of sharing a message with you that made you sit up and say, oh, okay, something's going on here?
Mm. Um, I think my first memories of gardens were growing up in England, and they were old gardens. They were established gardens, and they had a sort of a magical element to them. And being young, probably 5 or 6, going to gardens in um, Buckinghamshire and Somerset and Cornwall. Um, as a young child, I just remember feeling that the enchantment of them, and that maybe there was running water through, or there was a little brook at the bottom, and depending on the time of year, spring was is very fresh in my mind. I'm thinking about the daffodils and the crocus and the new green, the spring greens, and just this feeling of belonging in a place that had an energy to it. And I just remember just being lost in gardens and feeling very safe also in those spaces where I wasn't followed and I would just play and find little places to go and hide in bushes or shrubs or little, when you're little, you find places to go where grown-ups can't find you. And I just remember always knowing that and feeling comfortable in gardens. And then I wasn't that much older when my mother would buy 150 plants. I'm thinking about Rose of Sharon, but this is the Rose of Sharon in England, which is much smaller and it's like a ground cover. And she'd send me out with a trowel and say, Here, I want you to plant all of these on this bank. And that's what I did. And then a little bit older, she bought 100 pine trees and said, Here, I want you to plant these along the fence. And so I did. And so it was just something that I knew intuitively how to do was to be, in the garden, just enjoying the space and creating there whatever was needed without instruction. And that's kind of what I do now. I've always planted a garden wherever I've lived, whether I owned the place or, somewhere that my mum was telling me to plant. It's something about leaving a legacy, leaving a signature upon the earth, leaving part of yourself, your spirit.
Thank you. That's so beautiful and also so grounded. I love the way that you kind of allude, well, when we're children, it's such a gift, isn't it, to kind of run around, be joyful, find a hiding place, and just kind of be so in our original kind of state, of play and joy and curiosity. Because if you start to, if when you get into adult mode and you start to think, right, how do I connect with plants? You realize, oh, it's all the things I used to do as a child. I have to be joyful and I have to be creative and curious and playful. And actually, so it's just lovely how we get to, like you, I grew up in Buckinghamshire too. So I would have been running around in the garden not far from you. And it's, we're just so blessed, aren't we? And this is why, this is why I just feel like it's such a blessing that we've had an upbringing that has meant that we've got to experience all of that. Whereas there would be so many people across the world who are disconnected, who that, it's, even though it's broken in everybody, there's a connection which has really, it's really broken down. And we're just blessed, you have such a blessing that you've kind of had it with you right from day one, and there are so many people who haven't. So yeah, thank you very much for kind of sharing that, and how important it kind of is for everybody, even to have that, like if you can't have a big, like 100 pine trees, even maybe you can just have a pot plant, that kind of thing. I love that your mum, 100 pine trees, that's just incredible. Yeah, but
Well, it
also
felt
the
like 100.
trusting, it speaks to your mum sort of trusting and in caring you, that this, it speaks to me of that care that is so needed when we are tending young plants and really treating them like very, very special objects. Obviously, they are.
Mm.
So yeah, thank you so much. And obviously bringing that into your garden now, I would imagine that the plants can only thrive. So do you, I know obviously I was speaking when I introduced you about flower essences and how this is a process obviously that we, when we connect with the flowers, we love to do so because we get to kind of preserve their vibrancy. So do you remember kind of, if you like, what were the plants or the processes or the stage perhaps in your life that got you into creating flower essences or got you curious about that?
Absolutely. Um, it's a very specific time, Faye.
Uh-huh.
I've always gardened. I've always painted flowers. When I was young, I would paint flowers on everything that wasn't, nailed down, and everything that was actually. And they've just always brought me so much joy. But it was during the time of sort of early menopause. My husband and I moved to Nashville in Tennessee, and everything changed for me there. I was in a place. I worked on a flower farm for 3 years for a woman flower farmer who I still absolutely love. And I met lots and lots of creative women, medicine women, healers, farmers, musicians. I mean, you name it, women who were just incredibly vibrant and just showing up, doing, sharing their gifts.
Mm.
It was during that time that I began to work to create flower essences. Now, I left a very big garden in North Carolina, and I was feeling that I needed to not have a garden. And boy, was I wrong. That very first spring in this house, I thought I was going to shrivel and die because there was nothing. And so it was an urban garden, the very hot climate there. And I created an all white garden, and it was out of this world. And I grew herbs and flowers and vegetables together. And I've always done that. But I wanted to capture the essence of these flowers, and they invited me to do that.
Mm.
And so the first flower essence I ever created was hellebore, and it was
Oh.
the first flower that to bloom in that garden in the dead of winter. And there's something about hellebore that it holds this deep reverence because often it's the first flower to bloom in a garden, especially in the South here in the United States. And I have a little bit of an obsession for black flowers. I love to grow them in the garden. And so the black hellebore is very present even here in my garden in North Carolina. But there's something about a winter blooming flower where there's nothing green around. It's the land is frozen and hard and bare and barren, and you get to see the truth of what's
Mm.
there. There's nowhere to hide. And so hellebore was the first flower essence I worked with, the first one I captured. And when I was wanting to share it in my business that I also created when I lived in Nashville, I I painted the flowers. That was how I connected in with them, just little watercolor doodles, and that became the labels for every single one that I have even now in my flower essence collection. But hellebore was very present for me when my father died because of the time of year.
Uh-huh.
He died in the winter, and it's when I work with this flower, even now, magical things happen, like big transformational turning points. And so for that one to come in first was it was a big transformational time. And so I
Mm.
wasn't, I think about that a lot. And a lot of people work with hellebore for, different reasons, but most commonly it's for grief.
Mm.
It's really helpful for people who are grieving loss or, it's not just a death or a dying,
Mm.
but um, it's a very powerful plant, and also a toxic plant. So you're not ingesting any of the plant matter when you're working with flower essences, but the ones that are poisonous, when they come in to work with you, they really mean business. It's very serious. That's how I feel anyway.
Let's go here. Let's go there because this is coming up a lot is the banes. So the poisonous plants, the banes, right? So far, I'm going to share so far, but I want to circle back to something that you've been saying, but let's go there. So they are showing up and I feel, so for me so far this year, foxglove and also a type of clematis and then an orchid. Okay. And I'm like, oh, Bane, Bane, Bane. Okay. So toxic. So for me, generally, a toxic plant, I'm going to look at, okay, it's a Bane. So rather than it being a balm, it's being a Bane. And for me, I look at that as being a plant that would look at my shadow that might be helping with something I've pushed away or is just hiding in the shadow, something that's kind of dark, something that's sort of caused my heart, should we say, to close or my soul to disconnect or something to just want to push away. Yeah, so it's just really funny for me that the plants like this are coming up at the moment for so many people. And
Yeah.
I feel, and obviously I just had a process with my summer school where we were with a plant that one of the ladies actually who we were sat around, she actually looked physically green sitting by this plant because it was having that much of an effect on this kind of very subtle parts of ourselves that we've tried to push away. So is your experience of these, like I mean I was calling them banes, but these toxic plants, is would you agree with what I've just said in terms of like the shadow side, or
Totally.
should we say parts of ourselves that are more difficult to process, so we sometimes don't bother?
Yes. I actually wrote that in my notes about hellebore, is that it is my belief, especially hellebore, because of the time of year when it blooms, that there's nowhere to hide. It's like it really shines a light into the dark shadow side of you. Now, that may not necessarily mean a bad side of you, a
Mm.
bad trait or something like that. I feel like it's really where the gifts are, is in your shadow side. That's where your true medicine lies, your magic, your like original magic.
Mm.
And foxglove came up so strongly for me this spring. It grows here wild and seeds itself, but the foxglove were taller than me. And so I could
Me
not,
too this year. Me too.
couldn't
It was
get
like,
away from
okay,
those.
you're really in the
Really
garden.
in my face, yes. And really wanting to share, and all and everywhere and different colors, and quite majestic, but a um but a gentle presence, but a firm presence was, and it kept coming to me in meditations through walks through imaginal gardens. Foxglove was always there. And there was a plant. The place where I live now, I've been here for 8 years, and it was completely neglected and overgrown. So I didn't know what was here. And when monkshood showed up, about the third summer in, just arrived, and this is what's been happening here, new native plants and wildflowers, and some cultivated flowers too. They come back when they are ready to. They weren't quite ready at first. They thought, well, we don't know her yet. We're not gonna show our faces. But yes, monkshood was brand new for me. I'd never seen it, never worked with it, and I'm still very humbled by the presence of this flower. And it's one of the last flowers to bloom and to appear in the garden, like right at the end of summer, but very powerful plant.
It's yeah, it's a majestic plant, isn't it? The monkshood. Absolutely, yeah. And also interestingly for me, there is a nightshade which has come in the garden. You know, in it like I didn't put it there, it's just decided to come up. So it's very interesting how plants do. I've said this 100 times. Plants kind of appear when we're ready, when perhaps when the energy is right, all sorts of reasons. They just kind of come up and show themselves, and you're like, okay, perhaps I'm ready to work with you now. You know, it's that kind of feeling, isn't it? You something that you touched on earlier was this kind of, I laughed because obviously I ran a flower farm previously, and yes, you think you don't want to garden anymore. You think you don't want to connect with plants. You think you've just done because you're just
Yeah,
so exhausted.
exhausted.
And then it just causes so much sadness for your whole being and your whole soul if you actually are not growing, or if you're actually not connected. I think it's and you mentioned like our souls really do get sort of entwined in the land, and we yeah, it can be a kind of real process of grieving actually when we're not doing that, when we're not doing that work, when we're not in that space. And obviously, I was saying earlier that there is this collective, I think, disconnection and grief that we all carry because so many people, unlike us, didn't or don't have the opportunity for the connections that we do. So let's just talk now. Come on, this beautiful, lovely Flora, who is on the cover of your book, The Flowering. And I think this is just so lovely. So for anyone listening, you won't be able to see me, but I'm holding up this lovely book by Debbie called The Flowering, and it's on the front cover is an image which is it's really an image of an image that you made, a person, if you like, a character that came out of all these pressed flowers, wearing a beautiful petal gown, and standing out there on the page. And the book is actually full of some lovely illustrations and lovely stories about really this journey that the plant led you on. Plants led you on. And I was feeling when I was reading it, I just felt like, wow, I've been allowed into Debbie's journal here, and to hear this delicate story or this musing or this dream or this memory. So it's very much an insight into this personal connection that you have with the plants. And I was wondering, I kind of felt like it was a privilege. And I also thought, gosh, how that's very brave and courageous to kind of put that out there as the most gorgeous, beautiful book and share it with a small corner of the world. So how do you want to share the process? Because I'm sure there are some people listening who have got similar musings and beautiful, creative, colorful things that they need to share with the world too. So how did you really go about this, Debbie?
Um, Faye, I knew a long time ago that I had a book in me. It's written in
Mm,
my astrology, and I didn't know what that was. I've I've kept my work quite not so much hidden, but it's quite a solitary path to be on to speak this language and to work between the realms.
mm,
And I do use the word magic. And I've always I've kept journals for probably the last 16 or 17 years and been very just very ceremonial about needing to write every day. And I haven't actually written every day since I published that book, but as I felt that my journals were the my oracle because I will often pick one up and just read it cover to cover. And they're usually the books that I use, they're big, they have lines in them, and I have big writing, so I need, more spaces between the lines. And a book usually lasts me 3 months. And so I can read a book in a day, and I'm always often gobsmacked by what I've written 4 years ago or 10 years ago. And I'm like, my God, I've written about this and now it's happened. Or I read I read a section and it relates to exactly what I'm going through now.
Mm.
And all the answers are in there and it's quite extraordinary. And so, especially my dream work, I thought I'm just gonna I'm just going to share. I'm not going to edit anything. I'm just going to put together some stories taken directly from my journals without any timeline or there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to the book, but not really. You can pick up the flowering and open to a chapter and read it as a story on its own.
Mm.
And so I spent a couple of years gathering the stories, and the stories really raised their hands themselves. I didn't choose them. There are a couple of very profound dreams in there that were that sort of set the stage for the way that my life is now. And I will also say that the book has an energy of its own. It has a consciousness of its own. I trust completely that it finds its way into the hands of those who need to read it. And men have read it. My husband was the first person to read. He read the proof copy, and was deeply moved by it. And really, I felt that he understood me in a way that he probably hadn't ever before. And so it was a bit of a revelation, a revealing of my true self and the work that I had barely dipped my toe into at the time with the essence of self, which we will talk about. But I
Mm.
just, it was really important that everything in the book had been crafted by me. All the writing is mine, the drawings are mine. I I visioned the cover. I wanted the book cover to look like an old seed packet. And the artwork that you're speaking of on the front cover hangs in my house. I mean, it's faded now. The petals have faded, but Flora is very present and is my soul self for sure. And it was
Oh.
the most beautiful experience. It was seamless. It just magically came together. And the notes I get from women, or women will cross the street, local women, and say, "Oh my God, I'm reading your book for the third time." It stirs. The stories will stir parts of you, parts of the souls, and none of that is any of my business. I did my part just by going into some hidden parts of myself and just sharing without feeling afraid.
There was I just felt it was very courageous is the word that came to me. It felt, I mean, it's obviously much more than that, but for me I thought, God, there's a real courage in this, because it's almost like the journey, there's a definite journey, and it's like you didn't, like you described it as the unfurling of the essence of self. Like you didn't, it's not like you really knew the destination when you started the book, because you kind of didn't really know who you were becoming, or who you were perhaps unveiling or allowing to come forward and take center stage. So was there any, did you just feel all constantly like the plants were cheering you on, through kind of like, do they present themselves in dreams or in your garden in any way? And how did they, or did you just feel like when you read through your journals, oh yeah, okay, this is speaking to me, it has to be in the book?
Hey, that's such a good story. The plants are cheering me on still, and I think that growing up in Britain, um, I think parts of me, parts of my soul self, my gifts were a little bit squashed, hidden. I wasn't necessarily able to speak freely or paint freely, or that part of me wasn't honored. And I'm not putting blame on anyone. I'm just saying this is kind of how it was. And then when I've this summer marks 40 years of me living in the United States. So I come to a country where I have really struggled with whether I belong here or not, because my soul self, my chords, I am tethered so much to the lands, the lands of Britain. But one of the things that I have learnt through the gardens and through the flowers is that you can belong wherever you are planted. And to part of my teachings are to teach everyone, children, women, men, to connect in with the land where you are now, regardless of whether it's temporary or not. But your acre or your square mile, your community, understand that the rock that's beneath your feet, or the native plants, or the trees, or the animals that are there. Just gather all of that information, and introduce yourself. I go outside still and I say, I introduce myself to flowers and plants, or I'll start a new day and say, right, we're going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to walk around the garden and introduce myself to everything that's here. And there's something in that allows one to belong wherever you are.
Mm,
And I've met so many women, Faye, who've never connected with flowers. Nature was never part of their
mm,
upbringing. Even though they were in it, they were completely oblivious.
mm,
And it has opened something inside them very deep, especially women in their 50s and 60s. It's like there's a vibrancy that awakens within them that they didn't know was there. And so, yes, the flowers. When I went back to Nashville this year, I hadn't been there since I left, and I had an experience with peony.
oh,
I wanted to stay on the same acre of land where my home was. So I stayed in an Airbnb across the road. And it happened to where I had created this lovely garden, but it happened to be a garden that I had also planted, because once I'd planted this beautiful garden, then the people across the street said, we want that. We want you to come here
yeah.
and make something beautiful. So the lady that I was staying with cut some peonies and put them on the kitchen table. And they were peonies that I had planted. And I didn't think of anything. I didn't think anything of it when I walked in, and I placed a glass of water on that kitchen table and I went out for the day. And when I came back, I picked up the glass to have a drink, and it was completely, as soon as I picked it up, it was completely infused with the
Mm,
scent of the peonies. And I was like, wow.
mm,
And so the peony left me her own essence. And she said, you need more peony. You need to be more peony, more ruffles, more flair, more, more dancing, more. And it was so profound. And she stayed with me for weeks. In fact, like the entire time that peonies were blooming here, we're about because of the higher elevation, we're about 4 to 6 weeks behind everyone else in the south. So it was quite a long time that peony was present for me, but oh my gosh. And that it was a complete surprise. I was not anticipating it. And she also, it was also a thank you. It was like a
mm.
gratitude for, thank you for bringing the awareness of gardens to this section of East Nashville and inspiring all these people to plant gardens. And they did. It was magic.
Oh, it sounds magic, doesn't it? That's and yeah, what a lovely message from the peony as well. Like unapologetically
Mhm.
ruffly and showy and just so beautiful and feminine. So that's a lovely message. So will you please talk to us about the unfurling of the essence of self and or the essence of self really? Like how did this come about? And do you want to explain to everybody listening what is this essence of self and this process that you kind of took yourself or were taken on by the plants and now are taking others on too.
Well, it was a time when I was pretty unwell. It was winter, and I was working with hellebore flower essence, and I had this vision. It was a waking vision dream that if I'm able to capture the essence of a flower as a remedy, um, how amazing, how amazing would it be to be able to capture the essence of myself and take drops and learn about my true soul self. And I was so just stunned by the idea and how this had come into my head and into my mind, and it really did feel like a holy task, and that's what I call it. But of course, I wasn't given any instruction, and so I kept it very close. I didn't speak a word to anyone, and I spent months trying to understand how I was going to do this because I really wanted to do it. I knew that obviously the flowers were part of it. I knew that water had to be part of it. It had to still be captured in water as a water being its own medium and its own record keeper and keeper of codes. But I also knew that stone medicine had to be part of it. There had to be some kind of transfer because I wasn't about to immerse myself in a bath of water outside in the sun and assume that I had captured my essence. It wasn't a physical thing, it was an energetic soul essence that needed to be crafted. So I work with stones, I work with record keeper stones, and I work with
Mhm.
water. And for me, it all happened at night while I was sleeping when I am not conscious, working with these record keeper stones. And then during the day, what has been captured in the stones while I'm sleeping is then transferred into the water during the day. So an altar is created, and it was the most sacred altar I think I've ever created in my life, where I listened what wanted to come forward because I had no idea how I was going to do this. That was the hardest part, was the not knowing.
Mm.
But it was also the easiest part because I just had to trust that everything that said, that raised its hand or fell on the floor in front of me or showed up in my handbag wanted to be there. It was part of it. And initially, I thought it was going to be a 3 day process because everything for me is in threes. Everything is three petals. But on the first day, the second morning, I thought, no, this is an entire moon cycle. This is a long and beautiful process of, from new moon to full and full moon waning to, back to dark moon. And so it is an entire moon cycle from new moon to full moon. The essence is captured. And then at full moon, the mother essence bottle is created, just as you would with a flower essence.
Mm.
And then for the second part of the moon cycle, the waning part, the essence rests and refines, and there is no interaction with the altar. It's just doing its thing, distilling. And then you begin taking your essence drops at the next new moon. You make a little dosage bottle, just like with flower essences. And so I didn't tell anyone. For 3 months, I worked with my own essence. I
Yeah.
documented everything. Every morning, I would write about what I had dreamt, what stories had come through, and to to keep this story like a prey seed version, but not to water it down in any way. I was taken back to times in my life, stories, and without changing anything or judging or having any opinion about it, just to watch it in the truth that it was. And everything I saw and witnessed was not the story that I had carried with me throughout my life.
Mm.
And so what the essence does is it purifies, it takes out everything that is not true, all the bullshit stories, all the stuff that you've carried and thought about yourself, or you've been told by others about yourself that and thought were true. It all just gets washed away. And so it is like homeopathy. You're taking drops of your soul self, and in
Mm.
the process, it is clearing, just like a flower essence would, clearing parts of the emotional body, the astral bodies, layers and layers of stuff. And some of it may not even be your own. It's other
Yeah.
stuff that you've carried along the way. And so what you're left with is this beautiful, clear essence of yourself. And I now have been taking my essence for almost 4 years. I take it every night before I go to bed. I call it in. It's like a wisdom well that I can dip into. I ask specific questions and it gives me answers. Sometimes I need essence during the day if I'm going into a situation that I would rather not be in or in crowds of people, that it just brings me back to center. And it's been the most exquisite experience for myself and for the women I've worked with. I have worked with a few men. The transformation, especially with women who I've worked with locally, when I see them, I'm like, my gosh, you are so different. They look different. They are behaving differently. It gives you a freedom and a permission and liberation to just be who you are and share your gifts. And the flowering came, the book came from that. I felt completely able to share my truth.
Mm.
And I think it's a lifelong practice for me. I don't think I'll ever not take my essence. I've learned a lot through the women that I've worked with, and I want to also say, Faye, that the essence of self experience has a consciousness of its own. It has connected all the women in all the groups all over the world in a way that I can't even explain it. It's to look at it in my mind, it's like the flower of life
Mm.
geometry, where we're each our own circle, but we overlap, and then all these flowers are created, and we're all affected by what happens with the waters in every group. I have had women who've changed their names legally, have never felt that they were who they were named. Women who've moved to other countries just up and gone and said, I'm supposed to be in France, and then they're gone.
Mm.
I mean, big significant things and small things too. Not
Mm.
everyone's ready to do that.
Mm.
And there are some, as with all teaching, some people do it for a while and then they're on to the next thing, and there's no judgment around that again. But there are those who are just, this is this is what I'm doing. And some don't take their essence every day. They have
Mm.
special time in a moon cycle. Everybody, I have a musician friend who takes her essence before she sings, and it's her voice
Mm.
is different. An artist who puts drops of her essence in the base color of the canvas
Mm.
that she's painting, so her essence is in her work. I mean, it's just been incredible, incredible.
What a privilege to kind of be shown that path for yourself, and then to be holding that space and view other or witness, the unfolding of others. And it really speaks, it feels like a very shamanic process, of not just soul and power retrieval and restoration, but that alignment with kind of who we are, the truth of who we are, and that we're so that it's quite really, all of us, I think, at times struggle and we second guess ourselves the whole time. So what I love about it really is that idea of, well, you've got this bottle, you've got your mother essence forever. And so if there's something, it feels like if there's a sort of something that's going to throw you off course, or you're feeling a bit uncertain about something, and like that second guessing, or that inner critic's coming back, or you feel like you're falling into old patterns, it's like, oh, okay, I can get back to my center. Then it's a part of that path of getting back to center. So it's a really beautiful process. When I read about it, my first I was like, oh, I want to do that. Sounds great. And actually, you having described it though, it just feels so like there's something in my heart that goes, yes, this is like balm. This is like soothing.
It's
This is
fun.
really what we need. What is needed. Because as you explained in that, the flower of life,
Mm.
everything that we do, whether it's a garden or whether it's a work on ourselves, it's amplified, isn't it? It raises the energy within our tiny community, which then goes out and it makes a larger circle and a larger circle, and it all expands and is all connected.
It
Thank you
does.
very much for sharing that. It feels like such a privilege to kind of even really be being a little bit shown as to what that is,
Yeah.
so thank you. And I'm wondering, where are the flowers leading you now? What's the topic for you at the moment of discovery? What are you being shown?
Well, I think the greatest message, the loudest message, which has been ongoing since the spring when Poppy showed up, and it's really about, Debbie, you've got to be seen, you've got to be out there, you've got to be traveling and sharing this work with groups of women. The heart that, well, it's not difficult for me, but I have to be, I am like an edge dweller in the entire process because I am very strict about not sharing my own experience with it, because then that creates an influence. It gives them ideas, and the whole point of this is that they're going to receive their own information. And so it's kept very quiet. And it's for them, it's their work. I'm not doing the work, they are doing the work. And so the flowers, this from spring onwards, even starting with peony, was you've got to show up as your true flora self, fully in your essence. My garden has been reflecting that too, in ways I can't even describe. The colors, the vibrancy, the abundance of flowers out there right now at this sort of peaking time of
Mm,
summer here. It's so loud. There's nowhere quiet to go in the garden where somebody's not, waving. Everything's taller and more colorful and more vibrant, and the light is different this year. I've noticed it, and perhaps that's my own perception and my own consciousness, and everything's being raised, but it is. The garden wants to be part of it as well. That's the other thing that
mm,
I've been dreaming into, Faye, and I'm going to do. I do in-person work with the Essence of Self, but mostly it's been virtual on Zoom, which has worked really well and it's very powerful. But there's something really beautiful about being in person and actually looking into somebody's eyes and answering
mm,
questions in the moment. And so I have a really beautiful building in my garden, which was recently restored, and I want to hold the Essence of Self as a 1 day experience here where they get all the information, whereas online it's split into sort of 3 or 4 Zooms.
mm,
I want to put it all out there and then send them on their way with everything that they need, and then gather back with them after about 3 months and say, all right, what happened? What's going on? Because it
mm.
does take that time. It's not a
Yeah.
one and done thing. it's a beautiful process. And I encourage, you've got to write and you've got to pay attention to everything, all signs, all animals showing up, all
Mm.
flowers. And that's the other thing that I do. I have Lisa Estabrook, our mutual friend, has this beautiful oracle deck. And one of the things I do with everyone is that they choose in person, they choose a card from her deck. So they have a flower that is their ally throughout the Essence of Self journey. That's something I've started to do more recently, but it's a lovely way to introduce them into the world of working with the flowers and the plants, because not everybody understands that. But for people to come here to my garden, to walk the garden, to feel what they feel in the way that I do it, but I won't be telling them where the portals are. I won't be saying, well, this is the lower world and this is the upper world. It will help them ground into where they live and be inspired that, where the allies, where the land spirits are, that we're so supported in ways that aren't always easy to talk about or describe. But
Mhm.
all of that just feels, the awareness of that feels that it's much more prevalent now. Maybe it's just for me, where I live, that I landed here for a reason so that this work could be born from this place, and it was born from this place. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Including the garden in my work, where a
Mm.
lot of the flower essences were crafted here, and just sharing all of it as
Yeah.
part of the essence work.
That's beautiful, and I echo that really in my practice as well. And it's sort of like I
Mm.
agree totally with what you said. There's a reason why we're here in this spot, and making magic somehow. And so yes, I think there's really a great. You can't really even put a price on the value that others can get from kind of being in that space and being held there. And yeah, you when you were speaking there, you reminded me of something that we were doing in summer school, and there was this real awakening, a kind of theme that came up. As it was almost like there's this like need to not really come somewhere and learn a process and learn, be guided on step one, step two, step three, step four. This is the tick list, and then you get to the goal. But it's more a case of like shrugging off the cape and the layers and the conditioning and the learned behaviors which perhaps aren't really yours, and just and or preconceived ideas and judgments, and just sort of like, and the garden is the most amazing space to do that, because it would just bear witness to you as the layers kind of come off you and you unwind and you become, you're not reaching out for some wisdom or some guidance from someone. Actually, it's a case of going within and
Yeah,
then listening and finding and trust, and then learning to trust that, that voice inside, or finding the essence of me, which is gonna which supports me and feels right, and sort of learn. I think for many people it's a case of relearning that as well, because we've been taught to not trust it. And it's just
yeah,
so beautiful to hear you kind of so trusting, courageous, and creative with the way that the flowers kind of flow through you, and have allowed, you've allowed yourself to blossom and help others to do that. So I'm so blessed that we've had this chat together. Would you please share with everybody where they can connect with you, or what maybe your offerings are coming up and how they can find you?
yes. You can find me and contact me through my website, which is romanybotanicals.com, Romany like the gypsies. And I live in the Southern Appalachian Mountains, North Carolina. So anyone who's local to here, it's kind of the middle of nowhere, but not really, on top of a mountain. But I'm going to do an in-person Essence of Self experience on the 8th of August, so on the 8/8 Lionsgate portal, which I think will be really beautiful, and the garden will still be in all her magic. That's really what the garden's been inviting me to do, is
Mm.
to choose a date. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm completely trusting in I'll send out an email to all my subscribers and those who are able to be there for this lovely day, this workshop day. And it's just going to be me, and I'm going to share everything that wants to come forward from the land, from the garden, all about the essence of self. And so I think the new moon after that, I think it's on the 12th. So that will be the moon cycle that starts. And then I'm later in the year, I want to see how that goes. I think it's going to be just beautiful. And then I'll do likely another Essence of Self group later in the year, probably October, November, that will go through into into the new year, because those have been really powerful to start sort of after Samhain and then go through into the winter months, when you can really, there's nowhere to hide in the winter. It's all
Mm.
it's all wide open. But it's just been an honor to be able to talk about all of this, and and have a conversation, because I love this work. I feel like it's such an honor for me to be able to share it and in the world, and I just want to do more, but also keep it personal. I mean, it's a time of deep reverence and humility and intention, and that's the glue that holds it all together, and it's magic.
Mm.
It's magic. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie, from me and my garden and all the listeners. And thanks everyone for listening. You can find all of Debbie's links below. You can grab a copy of her lovely book.
Mm.
And yeah, join Debbie, and we'll try and persuade her to come to Scotland as well, everyone. Don't you worry. So please share this with a friend who would love to know about, who loves flowers, who you think, oh yeah, they could really do with finding out a little bit more about who they are. So yeah, thanks everybody. And yeah, if you're not a subscriber to the Shaman in the Garden, then you know what to do. And I'll see you there. Thanks everyone. Thanks Debbie. Bye.